HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Bloody January by Alan Parks, read by Andrew Mcintosh.
For indeed any city, however small, is in fact divided into two. One city of the poor, the other of the rich. These are at war with one another. Plato. Every picture tells a story, don't it? Rod Stewart. It became one of the cases cops marked their career by. Peter Manuel, Bible John, and Bloody January. Nobody really knew where the name came from. Probably some passive remark in Pitt Street, or in a pub next to Central. The papers got a hold of it pretty quick. Banner headlines straight away. Most famous one still framed and hung up in stations across in the city. Bloody January. How many more to die? Years later, the cops that worked Bloody January would tell the younger guys that they had no idea what it was really like back then. 6 bodies in 1 week. They'd sit in pubs and reminisce, retired now, run to fat and drinking too much because they had nothing else to do. They'd tell their war stories, about how close they came to an arrest or finding one of the bodies. The younger ones would smile and nod, listen with one ear on the football results coming out the TV, thinking, it can't have been that bad, but it was. 1st of January, 1973. Chapter 1. McCoy headed along the corridor towards the stairs, heels clicking on the metal walkway, breath clouding out in front of him. Never changed, Billiny. Freezing in the winter, boiling in the summer. The old Victorian building was on its last legs. Wasn't built for the number of prisoners they had stuffed into it now. 3, sometimes 4 of them locked up in a cell made for 2. No wonder the whole prison stank. The smell of overflowing slop buckets and stale sweat was so thick, it caught in the back of your throat as soon as the big doors opened. Stuck to your clothes when you left. He'd been coming up here since his first weeks on the beat. Only good thing about Billiny was that it saved you going anywhere else. The whole spectrum of Glasgow's wrongdoers ended up in here. From rapists and murderers, nonces and kiddie fiddlers, to bewildered old men caught coming out of the co-op with 2 tins of salmon stuffed up their jumpers, and their wives not long in the ground. Billiny wasn't fussy. It took them all in. He leant over the balcony rail, peered through the netting and the fog of tobacco smoke at the rec hall below. Usual crowd milling about in their denims and white plimsolls. Couple of boys whose names he couldn't remember playing ping-pong. Low-level troops from the gangs in the Milton gathered round the pool table. All long hair, moustaches and Borstal tattoos. One of them pointed with his cue as Jack Thompson was wheeled in front of the TV, started sniggering. A year ago he would have been too scared to even look at someone like Thompson. Now the poor bastard had a dent in his head so deep it was visible from up here. That's what happens when someone takes a sledgehammer to each knee and then gives you a few whacks on the head for luck. Can't walk, and your brain's so scrambled you don't even know where you are. He buttoned up his trench coat, blue in his hands. Really was fucking freezing in here. A wee fat guy stood up from the card school, looked up, nodded. Steph Andrews. Still kidding himself that no one in here knew he was a tout. McCoy dug in his pocket, took out one of the packets of Regal he'd brought with him and dropped it over the side. Steph had caught it, pocketed it, and was off before anyone even noticed. First rule of a visit to Billiny, bring fags. McCoy leant over a bit further. Still couldn't see the reason he'd come up here. Feeding time at the zoo, eh? He turned, and Tommy Mullen was leaning on the rail next to him. He took his cap off, scratched at his head. When McCoy had first started coming up to Billiny, Mullen's hair had been black. It was mostly grey now. How much longer you got now, Tommy? He asked. 3 more cunting weeks. Counting the days. Not sad you're going then? Joking, aren't you? Cannot fucking wait. Wife's brother's bought a wee caravan down in Girvan. Fresh air. Get the stink of this place out of my nose. What is it he wants anyway? McCoy asked. All I got was a call at the station to get up here. Mullen shrugged. Think he's going to tell me? He took a roll-up out of his baccy tin and lit up. McCoy looked over the balcony again, tried to see him in the crowd. You'll no see him down there, said Mullen. He's been moved. He's in the special unit now. McCoy let out a low whistle. The mysterious special unit. Nobody knew much about it or how it was supposed to work. Had been set up last year. Prison services embracing the 60s far too late. McCoy remembered a news conference on the telly. A grim-faced warden sitting behind a desk, flanked by two hippie professor types. The hippies blabbering on about art therapy, positive custody, and breaking barriers. Even though it was early days, any mention of the special unit was enough to start the papers frothing at the mouth. Most of the polish too. According to them, the special unit was going to be Sodom and Gomorrah, rebuilt in the banks of the Clyde. According to the hippies, it was just a small section of the prison where top security prisoners would be treated like human beings. McCoy wasn't too bothered either way. Wasn't like the usual stuff was working anyway. Bully squads beating the fuck out of troublesome prisoners, sticking them in cages in freezing wet basements. Far as he could see, it just made those nutters worse. All the more determined to stab or batter any screw that looked at them the wrong way. Mullen and McCoy left the main building and ran across the prison yard, coats over their heads, heading for a red door in the far wall. Weather was getting worse again. Icy sleet, wind whipping leaves and rubbish across the yard. Mullen pulled the red door open, and they were in. McCoy just stood there looking, taking it in. Alice through the looking glass. There were two greenhouses in front of them, full of flowers and tomato plants. Beds had been dug out the concrete, planted with neat rows of vegetables. A fenced-off area at the side was full of huge lumps of stone, with half-finished faces or bodies carved into them. Granite, glistening in the wet. The door of a wee shed beside them opened and a thin bloke stepped out, long blonde hair, chisel in his hand, dusty leather apron. He lifted up his safety goggles. "All right, Tommy," he asked. "No seen you for a while." Took a couple of seconds for McCoy to realise who he was. Bobby Munro. Couldn't help but smile. Bobby Razor Munro standing in Berlin with a chisel in his hand. No wonder the papers were going mental. Must be the first time he'd used one for its real purpose. Normally, he'd have it at someone's throat. "Aye, all good," said Mullen. "Looking for Howie. He'll be stuck in front of the TV as per." He pointed to a door. "Through there." "So you're Tommy now, are you?" asked McCoy as they went in. "All best pals? That how it works?" "Don't fucking start me," said Mullen as they walked through the door. "That took a lot of getting used to, I tell you. The use of surnames is demeaning and depersonalising and must be phased out," he recited in a posh voice. "Load of fucking pish." Last time McCoy had been in the washing block, it was full of big industrial machines churning away. Men standing behind big electric presses, half hidden in the clammy steam. Not now. Now it was almost empty. Painted white. Framed pictures and posters on the walls. Huge iron sculpture in the middle of the floor. As far as McCoy could make out, it seemed to be two dogs with human faces fighting each other. Or maybe fucking each other. Couldn't quite tell. Mullen pointed at a door in the corner. "Lounge is over there." McCoy stepped through. He didn't know what he was expecting. But whatever it was, it wasn't this. It was like stepping into your auntie's cosy front room. Geometric wallpaper, 2-bar fire going full blast, and a 3-piece suite with wooden arms positioned round a colour TV. Didn't even smell of slop buckets. Only one thing was spoiling the cheery atmosphere. Howie Nairn. He was sitting slumped on the couch. No denims and white sand shoes for the prisoners in the special unit. They got to wear their own clothes. In Nairn's case, that wasn't much of an improvement. A dirty Che Guevara t-shirt, a tartan scarf round his neck, flared denims, and long, wavy, auburn hair tied back in a ponytail. Even had his slippers on. He was a bit thinner, but looked much the same as last time McCoy had seen him. Was one thing hadn't changed. Still had the raised crisscross of scars running across his neck, disappearing down into the collar of his t-shirt. "Get that screw to fuck," Nairn said, eyes not leaving the TV. "He's not allowed to be in here." "Suit yourself," said Mullen. "McCoy?" He nodded an okay, and Mullen backed out the door. "I'll leave you boys to it. Give us a shout when you're done." McCoy sat down on the arm of the couch, put a packet of Regal on the wee tile-covered coffee table, waited. Was sure he could smell dope from somewhere. Wouldn't surprise him. Nothing about here could anymore. Nairn didn't say anything. Eyes stayed firmly fixed on the TV. Up to him then. "I got the message. Supposed to be honoured, am I?" Nairn grunted. "Don't flatter yourself, McCoy. You were the only fucking Paulus whose name I could remember." McCoy looked at the posters taped up on the wall. Not the usual girls with their legs apart. Not in here. A map of Middle Earth. Picture of Chairman Mao. Books on the shelf were as bad. The autobiography of Malcolm X. Stranger in a Strange Land. The Bhagavad Gita. "All this hippie stuff working, is it?" he asked. "No feeling the need to open the warden's face anymore?" No response. He sighed, tried again. "So is this about Garvey then?" Nairn finally looked away from Zebedee and Dougal. "Who?" "Stan Garvey, stuffed in a tea chest and chucked in the Clyde with some iron weights for company." "Believe it was your doing. Staying in this holiday home made you want to confess all, that it?" Nairn smiled. Looked very pleased with himself. "So that was the cunt's name, was it?" He shook his head. "No. Don't know nothing about that, Detective McCoy." McCoy raised his eyebrows. News travels fast. Nairn sat up, stuffed his hand down his jeans, scratched at his balls and then sniffed his hand. "Aye, well, I've got some more news for you. Someone's going to get killed tomorrow." "What? You going to knife someone in the showers? Giving me a heads up?" Nairn smiled again, revealing a row of small yellow teeth. "Always think you're a funny cunt, McCoy. About as funny as fucking cancer." Up the town. Girl called Lorna. McCoy waited, but nothing else was forthcoming. He realised he was going to have to play along. "Who's going to kill this Lorna then?" Nairn looked disgusted. "Fuck off. I'm not a grass." McCoy laughed. "You're not a grass? Fuck am I doing sitting here then?" "You're sitting here because I'm stuck in this shithole. I can't do anything about it, so you're going to have to." "How am I going to do that then?" "Get on the radio and tell every girl called Lorna to stay in bed all day. Away and shite, Nairn. You're wasting my time." He stood up. He'd been on since 5 this morning. Was tired. Wasn't in the mood. All he wanted was a pint, and to be as far away from this prison and from Howie Nairn and his shite as possible. He leant forward to pick the cigarettes up off the table, and Nairn's hand shot out, grabbed his arm. He pulled him close, face leaning into his. "You start paying attention to what I'm telling you, McCoy, or you're going to make me awful fucking angry, right?" McCoy looked down at Nairn's tattooed fingers, wrapped round his arm, knuckles white already. He was a prisoner, and McCoy was a Paulus. There were lines, and he'd just crossed them. Game was off. "Get your fucking hand off me, Nairn," he said quietly. "Now, and don't you ever fucking touch me again. Got it?" Nairn held on for another few seconds, then let McCoy's arm go, pushed it back towards him. McCoy sat back down. "Either you start talking sense, or I'm off. Last chance." He waited. Nairn stared back at him, watery blue eyes fixed on his. If he was trying to intimidate him, it wasn't working. He'd been stared at by far worse than him. He shrugged and stood up. Time over. He walked over to the door, shouted on Mullen. He heard his boots coming down the corridor, segs clicking against the lino floor. Voice came from behind him. "She's called Lorna. Don't know a second name. Works in town. One of they posh restaurants, Maison or Whitehall's. Don't know who, but someone's gonna do her tomorrow. McCoy turned. That it? Nairn was staring at the TV again. That's enough. Just say I believe you, and just say I stop it. You'll tell me what the fuck you're playing at? Nairn nodded. Now get to fuck. You're stinking up my living room. What was all that about then? Asked Mullen, when they were back in the main building. Lock-up was starting. McCoy had to raise his voice to be heard over the catcalls and clanging cell doors. Fuck knows. Telling me someone's going to get murdered tomorrow. No in here. McCoy shook his head. The town. Mullen looked relieved. Thank fuck for that. I'm on tomorrow. How come Laughing Boy knows about it anyway? Christ knows. Think he's just pulling my string. They waited as a prisoner with a black eye and a bleeding lip was walked past them. Hands cuffed behind his back. Officer either side, still shouting the odds. That's the funny thing, continued McCoy. I was there when he got done, but it was Brodie's deal, no mine. Don't know why he wanted to speak to me. Brodie. Christ, no cunt would want to speak to him. He fit him up. He shook his head. Nope. Whole thing was straight for once. Nairn was as guilty as they come. Caught with a holdall with 3 sawn-off shotguns in it. Mullen left him at reception. Told him he'd let him know where his leaving do was. McCoy liked Mullen well enough, but no way was he spending a night in the pub with a load of moaning-faced prison officers telling war stories. A girl called Lorna. Maybe he would call the restaurants just in case. Couldn't be that many Lornas working there. Still couldn't think why Nairn had told him. He'd barely looked at him when he was arrested. Too busy trying to kick out at Brodie, calling him every filthy name in the book. His eyes drifted up to the calendar on the back of the turnkeys' wee office. Topless girl draped over a car, trying to look like she was fulfilling her life's desire to hold a big spanner. Didn't realise it was Thursday. Maybe he wouldn't bother with Nairn's shite. Maybe he'd go and see Janey instead. He was old after all. The buzzer went, and the lock shifted back with a loud clang. The turnkey opened the door, held onto it as the wind rattled it in its runners. McCoy peered out at the trees surrounding the car park, whipping back and forth. Turnkey grimaced. Rather you than me, pal. Rather you than me. He made a run for it, got in the unmarked Viva, and slammed the door. He started the engine up, and the radio came on. Choppy, choppy, cheep, cheep. Suddenly filling the steamed-up car. He swore, turned the dial. Rod Stewart, Maggie May. Much better. He jammed the heater to full and pulled out onto Cumbernauld Road, heading for town. If he was going to see Janey, he needed to go and see Robbie first. Chapter 2. How long have we got, he asked. She grinned. All night, Stevie. Cleared it with Iris. She wasn't happy about it. He went to take a couple of the tenant's screw tops off the set of drawers, and she wagged her finger at him. Still have to pay for drink. You know that. He shook his head, took out a 50p, left it in a porcelain dish by the bottles. The shebeen was big. One of those huge Victorian flats she got in Glasgow. Every room converted to a bedroom apart from the kitchen. That was Iris's domain. She sat on an old kitchen chair in the doorway, crates of bottles and big Chaz the Bouncer looming behind her. She told him once that the shebeen made twice as much money out of the drink as it did out of the girls. Whatever that said about Glasgow. She didn't mess about, Iris. Only sold whiskey and beer. Take it or leave it. Tenants and red hackle. The real money was made after hours on a Sunday, by midnight on a Friday, or 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, when the real drinkers started to get the shakes. She could pretty much charge what she wanted for it. He'd passed enough shamefaced women and roomy-eyed men on the stairs to know how well she did. Drinkers always found the money from somewhere, even if it meant their wains didn't eat the next day. Janey'd built a joint with the grass he'd brought. Good stuff, according to Robbie. taken off some American band playing at Green's Playhouse the night before. Half of it deposited into the lock-up at Central and half straight into Robbie's pocket. He'd only charged him £1. By the expression on Janey's face, she'd have been a lot more than that. She put the thin joint in his mouth, closed her own over the burning end, lips forming a seal, and blew the smoke deep into his lungs. He held his breath as long as he could, then let out a cloud of the sweet-smelling smoke. Didn't take long to kick in. He felt a bit woozy. Good. Robbie was right. He took it back off her. Had a couple more deep puffs and handed it back. Janey'd put a scarf over the wee lamp on the bedside table, lit a few joss sticks, stuck some pictures from magazines of beaches and expensive cars onto the peeling wallpaper. Anything to make the place a bit less like the back bedroom of a cold water flat in Postle Park. Atmosphere, she called it. Punters like it. Younger ones, anyway. He sat down on the end of the bed, tried to untie the laces of his shoes. He giggled. It was more difficult than he thought. He managed to get his tie and shut off. Tried and failed to unbuckle his belt. Started giggling again. Janey'd put an album on the wee record player in the corner. Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Had to keep it low, though. Iris didn't like her playing music. Couldn't hear what was going on. Wasn't his favourite, but tonight it sounded good. Grass, drink, and the music was starting to work together. Perfect equilibrium. Janey started dancing. Watching herself in the cracked mirror in the wardrobe, she was swaying to the music, singing along. It's so very lonely. You're 1,000 light years from home. She was a good-looking girl, long black hair, curvy body, funny wee button nose and a big smile. Too good-looking to be working here. Iris's shebeen wasn't exactly what you'd call high class. Punters were mostly labourers off the sites, or men from the iron box factory with Friday night's wages burning a hole in their pocket. Every time he tried to ask her about it, tell her to find somewhere else, she laughed it off. Told him she liked it here. Had worked in a lot worse places. She caught sight of him in the mirror watching her, smiled and stuck her tongue out at him. He leant over and pulled her down onto the bed beside him. She laughed, pretended to struggle. He kissed her as she kicked off her platform sandals, wiggled out her hot pants. He kissed her neck, moved his hands down to her breast, cock already hard against her thigh. Dope was really kicking in now. He felt heavy, slow, relaxed. He moved down her. She ran her fingers through his hair and he looked up at her, grinned. You and me, Janey. You and me, he said. The record stopped, arm lifted. Went back, and when the music started again, she comes in colours everywhere. He was in her now, getting quicker, breathing heavy against her neck, getting there. She wrapped her legs around his back, moved in closer, whispered in his ear, Come on, my wee darling, come on. He moved another few times, tried to hold back but couldn't. He moaned, collapsed on top of her, breathing heavily into her neck. He lay there for a minute, then raised himself up on his elbows, looked into her eyes. That was magic. How about you? You okay? She nodded. Slapped him on the back. Let's do another, eh? He rolled off, sat up against the headboard and watched her. She was sitting cross-legged, bag of grass and fold of papers on the album cover nestling in her lap. Long dark hair hanging down like a curtain over her face. She was a pro. Could roll a joint in seconds flat. Could even do it with one hand if she had to. He looked at his watch. 12:10. He wasn't going to any restaurants tonight. Didn't care. Too stoned to go anywhere. Nen could fuck off. He wasn't his fucking errand boy. He wanted to be here, with her. She lit up another joint and took a deep drag. As of 10 minutes ago, it's my birthday, he said. January 2nd. That right? She asked. What age are you then? 30. Past it. She smiled hazily, eyes glassy, leant over and kissed him, put the joint in his mouth. He took a drag, felt a rush to his head. He couldn't think of a better way to celebrate. He exhaled, lay back on the bed. Could hear Janey singing to herself as she built another joint. Could hear a closing door and the clatter of some punter's boots walking down the corridor. Iris answering the door and the clink of bottles as she handed them over. Janey leant over him and gently blew a cloud of the grass smoke into his face. He breathed in, watched the headlights of the cars driving past, making giant shadows that came and went. He listened to the rain battering against the window, remembered being in a caravan with his mum and dad when he was a wee boy. Janey switched the lamp off, snuggled up beside him. He watched the orange end of the joint glow and fade as she inhaled. He put his arm around her shoulders, pulled her in, let his eyes close, and he drifted away. 2nd of January, 1973. Chapter 3. McCoy woke up freezing cold. All of the blankets wrapped around Janey. Only a sheet between him and the ice starting to form on the inside of the windows. He tried to burrow under the sheets and fall back asleep, but it didn't work. Combination of a hangover and the cold meant he'd no chance. He tried to shake Janey awake, but she was having none of it. Just grunted and turned away, burrowed back down under the blankets. He got dressed quickly, picking up his clothes from where he'd dropped them, pulled the front door of the shebeen closed behind him, and walked down the stairs. 5:30. Too late to go home, too early to go into work. Maybe he'd check the restaurants after all. He'd nothing else to do. The city was starting to wake up, first buses rolling past, passengers leaning on the windows half asleep, bundled up against the cold. Despite the holiday, New Year was over, back to normal, no matter how bad the hangovers were. Christmas lights hanging across the streets were still on, bells and holly weakly flashing on and off through the freezing mist and the snow that was starting to fall. A dog appeared round the corner of Sauchiehall Street, ran at the seagulls feeding on an overturned bin, and they wheeled up and away, squawking into the sky. McCoy was freezing. Been standing in under the canopy of the Marmaison since 6:30, stamping his feet and blowing in his hands to try and keep warm. So far he'd watched the road sweeper trying to gather up all the soggy chip packets and empty beer bottles strewn round the street. Bought a paper off a boy selling them from a pram, and stood out the way as two blokes pushed a cart full of old carpet and underlay up Hope Street. He conducted a thorough search of every one of his pockets, still couldn't find his other glove. He took the one he had off his left hand and stuck it on his right, just as the restaurant manager turned up. Mr. Agnotti, as he introduced himself. A right snotty wee bastard, as it turned out. Suppose you had to be to work in a place like that. McCoy'd only been in the restaurant once, Murray's 50th birthday dinner. Didn't think he'd be back, not unless he won the pools. It was a big room, wood-panelled, hushed waiters going back and forwards with silver service trays and bottles of wine. Other clientele were all businessmen, stuffed with well-done steaks and prawn cocktails, after-dinner cigars plugging their fat faces. Agnotti took McCoy into his office, asked to see his badge before he would answer any questions. Wasn't happy about being interviewed. Turned out they did have one girl called Lorna working there, an underwaitress, whatever that was. He wrote out an address on a wee card and handed it over. "May I inquire what this is about?" he asked. McCoy smiled at him. Couldn't help himself. "No," he said. A kitchen porter was coming in as he was leaving, chaining up his bike outside. He pointed at a picture on the staff notice board in the corridor when he asked him if he knew Lorna Skirving. It had been taken at some staff night out. 4 women sat round a table in a pub, all dressed up, glasses held high, big smiles. Lorna Skirving was the one at the end, 19, low-cut dress, dyed blonde hair, good-looking. He took it off the wall and pocketed it. Had to be who Nen meant.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?